That's it. I want off the boat. I don't consent to this, man. This is a game of chicken, and Canada's going to lose 100%. So obviously we know America has imposed tariffs on Canada. That sucks. That really sucks. Now Canada has said that we're doing the same thing to America. We're doing a retaliatory response. So 25% on Canada, and then Canada imposes 25% on America. And then Trump just said, all right, bet we're doing reciprocal tariffs. So the 25% that Canada is putting on America, America's matching that dollar for dollar, saying, okay, we raised you 25 and now we're at 50. So if Trudeau matches that again, Trump's just going to keep going and going and going until eventually it becomes a war of attrition. And that's what's happening right now, man. I don't like this. The world is imploding. North America is sinking. At least Canada is. Oh mon Dieu, as they say. And the craziest part too is when Justin Trudeau announced all of this, he said Canadians are going to keep booing the American anthem. What, bro? You're the prime minister for like 3 more days. What the fuck are you saying? We're going to keep booing the American anthem. He doesn't speak for us. Look, Americans out there. Hello. I'm speaking to Americans. Canadians don't want this shit. We don't want this at all. We don't consent to this. We didn't vote for this. This is not cool. We don't like this. All right. Just keep that in mind as you watch this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Holy crap. We gotta take a look at all this stuff, man. This is just getting crazy. So let's get right into it.
Spoke this morning. Justin Trudeau said President Trump is trying to orchestrate the total collapse of Canada's economy. Trudeau offered a blunt message to Americans saying their government is to blame.
I want to speak first directly to the American people. We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you. As of this morning, markets are down, and inflation is set to rise dramatically all across your country. Your government has chosen to put American jobs at risk, at the thousands of workplaces that succeed because of materials from Canada or because of consumers in Canada, or both. They've chosen to raise costs for American consumers on everyday essential items like groceries and gas, on major purchases like cars and homes, and everything in between. They've chosen to harm American national security, impeding access to the abundant critical minerals, energy, building materials, and fertilizers that we have and that the United States needs to grow and prosper. They've chosen to launch a trade war that will, first and foremost, harm American families.
And the CBC's...
And then he also proceeded to say that Donald Trump is a smart guy doing something that's extremely dumb. Then he also said that Canadians are going to keep booing the American anthem. Brother, no. Brother, ew. Brother, ew. Canadians do not want this. I don't know what Canadian out there is booing the American anthem. If that's you, screw you, pal. Take a hike, bud. Like, that's not cool. That's not Canadian. Are you kidding me? Dude, it's like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the American anthem at hockey games, there was like sound problems and stuff like that, and the Canadians finished the anthem. Right? They finished the American anthem because the singer wasn't able to do it because of technical difficulties and stuff like that. We don't boo the American anthem. What the heck is going on, man? Now it's becoming not just a political thing. Now it's becoming a citizen v. citizen thing. And you can have Canadians talking shit to Americans and Americans talking shit to Canadians. And that's not okay. No. Okay? I don't think this is good. Our government is mismanaging this to all levels. You've never heard an American politician say, go out and boo the Canadian anthem. Never once.
Karina Roman joins us live from Ottawa with more. So, Karina, there were a lot of key messages there from the Prime Minister today. I think a lot of Canadians who were watching would remark that this was a prime minister speaking to Canadians, to Americans, to Donald Trump with some pretty frank messages.
Indeed. And, you know, he started off his speech by, you know, not just saying that the U.S. had declared a trade war on Canada, but pointing out that Canada is the friend and the ally and the closest neighbor. Meanwhile, the American administration talking more about a closer alignment with Russia and Vladimir Putin, who is anything but the ally and friend that Canada is, and asking Americans and Canadians and everyone to make sense of that. Obviously a rhetorical question that it doesn't make sense. But he did speak as well to Trump directly, which, from what I understand, was carried on American television, cable television, Fox and CNN, where he addressed Donald Trump directly, calling him Donald, talking about the historic free trade deal that they both made and signed in Donald Trump's first administration, other accomplishments on the world stage. Have a listen to what he said.
Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal. But Donald, they point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do. We two friends fighting is exactly what our opponents around the world want to see.
So it doesn't...
Bro, the freaking Ukrainian grifter just got booted out of the Oval Office. It was the most humiliating thing that we've ever seen politically in an extremely long time. He revoked all help to Ukraine, all money, right? Everything to Ukraine because of the disrespect that Zelensky brought in the Oval Office. Now, is it any better that another world leader, you know, disrespects President Trump outside of the Oval Office? Maybe it's outside of his house, right? Maybe it softens the blow a little bit, but bro, calling the president by his first name like that in order to be condescending and try to belittle him, frick, dude. Come on, man. We just seen what the president did with Ukraine. What the fuck are you doing, Trump? Or Trudeau, what the fuck are you doing, man? Come on, dude. Put some respect on his name. We know that was part of the campaign promise. Mr. President Trump is saying we're going to be respected. We're going to be back to where we need to be. And until politicians give some respect to America and the president, man, it's going to be a bumpy ride. And this just set Canada back a little bit.
Really get much blunter than that in terms of a direct address to the president. But he also went on to acknowledge that the whole border fentanyl crisis was, in fact, a pretext. It's the legal pretext, certainly, for the tariffs, but a false one. That the facts do not bear out that there's any crisis at the northern border. And, in fact, all the measures that Canada has taken in hand to improve the border shows that Canada is taking it very seriously. He also brought up the mixed messaging from Donald Trump, that now, again, he's mentioning American banks, which, yes, do operate in Canada, but saying that that, of course, Donald Trump is saying that they don't. But also how yesterday Donald Trump talked about how the way to avoid tariffs is having automakers move to the U.S., which is really one of the motives behind this. But relying mostly on the consistent message from Donald Trump, which is to put economic harm on Canada because Canada would be better off, in Donald Trump's view, as the 51st state, and acknowledging that is what is really going on. Have a listen.
What he wants is to see a total collapse of the Canadian economy, because that'll make it easier to annex us, is the second half of his thought. Now, first of all, that's never going to happen. We will never be the 51st state. But yeah, he can do damage to the Canadian economy, and he's started this morning. But he is rapidly going to find out, as American families are going to find out, that that's going to hurt people on both sides of the border.
And it is that reality, in terms of the motivation behind this, is why the Prime Minister says there's really no reason to maybe try and find another way forward, like opening up negotiations for the free trade deal again, because how do you negotiate with a leader whose motivation is to make your economy nothing? There's no reason to sit across the table from someone and negotiate when that is their motivation. Beyond that, of course, the Prime Minister did take the time to talk about the counter tariffs that are being applied, the retaliatory tariffs. So it's $30 billion immediately, and then another $125 billion in the next 3 weeks if the tariffs don't come off. He was asked about non-tariff measures. He wouldn't really go into details other than to say that he is speaking with the premiers this afternoon. We know that a couple of the premiers are quite on board with the idea of energy restrictions, such as Premier Ford from Ontario, who was talking about putting an export tax, or is planning to put an export tax on electricity to certain border states. Quebec seems to be open to the idea. Alberta, not so much. Danielle Smith saying she wouldn't want to do that. That said, you don't get a sense from the Prime Minister that then he would go ahead and impose that if you don't have agreement from the premiers, because he said that the priority is unity, that the number one thing Canada needs to make sure is that we are not fighting with each other. And that is how we can win this battle, or at least survive this battle. The Natural Resources Minister was out today as well, and really gave a very succinct glimpse of how this will forever change the relationship between Canada and the U.S. Have a listen.
While I am quite sure that we will, by dint of geography, continue to trade with our American neighbors, it has become very, very clear that we can no longer rely on the Americans in the way that we have in the past. We will never go back to where we were 3 months ago with our friends in the United States. We will never be able to trust them in the same way that we did before.
It is really quite an extraordinary statement, isn't it, to just say that? I think a lot of Canadians feel that way. There are lots of questions about what the government is going to do, Karina, to support workers and businesses feeling the pain of these tariffs.
This is going to stink for years, man. This is going to stink for freaking years. I mean, the damage has been done, right? And it's gonna take a very long time. We've already been booing each other's national anthem. Prime Minister Trudeau said we're gonna keep booing the anthem. I mean, like, this is there's no easy fixes. Even if all of a sudden Canada says, okay, you know what, we're gonna remove all of our tariffs and we're just gonna do immediately what President Trump has been asking. That's not gonna happen. But let's just say that that's what happens. The damage has already been done, right? You already have politicians that are going to disagree heavily with that. They're going to be calling for radical measures, like Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, he's getting ready to shut off the power, right? By the time this is uploaded, he could have very well already have shut the power off to 1.4, 1.5 million homes in America. Now, it is a split grid, so will America be able to pick up the slack and provide power to those homes? Yeah, absolutely, but it'll be a bit of a strain, right? It's less than 1% of America's overall power, right? The entire grid for the country, so it's not like a crazy big shock to the American system. I think that they would be able to pick up the slack, but threatening to cut off the power, especially in the winter time like that, I mean, there's no good time to do it. If it's in the summertime, it'd be heat waves, air conditioners aren't working. I mean, it's just, that's an act of war, right? That's a freaking act of war, man. Our Ontario Premier is ready to do an act of war. There's a reason why Russia, even with all the sanctions that everyone in the world has put on Russia, even with all of the bombs and the money and the materials and the troops' boots on the ground that's gone into fighting against Russia, they still haven't cut off their power that they're providing to Europe, because that is a bloody act of war. It's a bit of a gray area between Canada and America right now, but it's still, the law is going to say that it's an act of war. I don't like this, folks. I don't like this. And I think that we just got to maintain on good terms between the Canadian people and the American people and just let the freaking politicians duke it out. But I would hate for this to turn into something that it doesn't need to be, even though we're already there. But let's take a look now at the response from President Trump and how he's basically saying, okay, well, we're going to raise our tariffs as well. Here we go.
How are the tariffs playing on the other side of the Canada-U.S. border? For that, let's bring in the CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Washington. And Megan, we've heard from Donald Trump. Tell us more about what he and his administration are saying right now.
Well, Andrew, we haven't seen Donald Trump on camera anywhere today, but he has been busy writing on his social media platform, Truth Social. So let's take a look at what he's saying, particularly in response to Canada's response in terms of the retaliatory tariffs that Canada plans to impose. Trump writing, please explain to Governor Trudeau of Canada that when he puts on a retaliatory tariff on the U.S., our reciprocal tariff will immediately increase by a like amount. And what he's referring to there, Andrew, is the next round of tariffs, or even the next round, because what's happening today is really just the first wave of tariffs that are set to hit Canada and then other trading partners of the U.S. On April 2nd, that is when Trump is set to announce what he calls reciprocal tariffs on all of the U.S.'s trading partners that he feels impose tariffs on the U.S. or other what he calls unfair trading practices. So that's an interesting response from Trump, because as we know, he has been indicating that the next rounds of tariffs he plans on imposing, like on steel and aluminum, which are coming up, are going to stack on top of the ones that are being imposed today. Now, in terms of why these are going ahead today, the justification for them, what we're hearing from Trump's administration is that Canada and Mexico failed to take enough action on border security. Because remember, these tariffs today are supposed to be about fentanyl crossing into the United States from Mexico and Canada. That was a chief concern of Donald Trump, and illegal border crossings. And the big question leading up to yesterday and today was, were all the steps that were taken by Canada and Mexico in recent weeks enough to satisfy him? And the answer clearly was no, that they weren't satisfied and felt it necessary to go ahead and impose these tariffs. Canada has been trying to argue that the amount of fentanyl coming into the U.S. Across the border is very small and much, much lower than what crosses from the Mexican border.
Yeah, that may be true for the amount of drugs that have been caught by the border services. But again, you have a super lab in BC that was busted last year in 2024, and that had enough materials to kill 90 plus million people. That's more than our country by 2. Entirety of Canada, repopulate Canada, and the entirety of Canada again, and then some. That's insane. That's more dangerous than a nuclear bomb, right? That's freaking crazy. That's a massive act of terrorism that was in the works right here in British Columbia. That's just one place. How many other of these super labs are across Canada, right? If you start combining everything, hundreds of millions of people potentially, right? So that's what they're worried about. For crying out loud, that's what we're worried about. I mean, that's freaking absurd that we're allowing that to happen. Where's our freaking spy agency? Where's our police? There wasn't even an arrest that took place at that super lab. There was a janitor dude sweeping in the middle of the night with his headphones on and the buffer, like you see in the movies, buffing the floors. And he got arrested because that's when they broke in to go do that. Where were all the cooks, right? Where was Walter White? Where was Jesse Pinkman, right? Like, come on, man. Crying out loud, this country, we're not even a serious country at this point.
But today, Andrew, Vice President J.D. Vance was kind of dismissing that argument, saying when Canada tries and makes that argument that it's a small amount, that amount is still killing Americans. That is the view of Trump and his administration. So take a listen to how the Vice President is characterizing this.
The president's going to have conversations with the Canadians. We need to see real engagement on the fentanyl issue, on the drug issue. That is fundamentally the underlying element of these tariffs, is we think the Canadians have not been serious about stopping the drug trade. Now, people will sometimes say, well, if you look at the numbers, the Mexicans send way more fentanyl into the United States than the Canadians do. The Canadians have allowed a lot of fentanyl to come into the country. It's not a defense to say more has come from Mexico, because way too much has come from Mexico too.
So again, he's tying today's tariffs to the fentanyl issue, the border issue. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, was doing the same thing on American networks this morning. He said that this is not a trade war, but a drug war. But we've been sort of hearing different messages from the president himself, Andrew, in terms of why he's imposing these tariffs. Yesterday, when he was speaking at the White House, he was bringing up the auto industry. In other social media posts he was making this morning, he was talking about the banking industry and claiming falsely that Canada doesn't allow American banks to do business in Canada. That doesn't seem fair to him, he was essentially writing, talking about how if companies move to the United States, there are no tariffs. And we know that's another explanation, rationale we've heard from the president for using tariffs as...
I mean, the American banks in Canada, first of all, that would be pretty cool because there's a massive monopoly here in Canada, and that would help, diversify our markets. And secondly, we don't just have Canadian banks in Canada. You ready for this? You may already know this, man. We got the freaking Chinese banks. We have China banks here in Canada. We don't have American banks. We got China banks. That's how Canada operates. We say F you to America. Hello, China. We love China, apparently, right? I don't get it. I don't appreciate that. I'd rather an American bank. I'd rather an American bank than a bunch of Chinese banks in this country. So, I mean, I could see why President Trump is freaking pissed, right?
As a tool to incentivize companies to set up shop in the United States or bring their plants back from places like Mexico or Canada. So they're shifting explanations we're hearing for the tariffs for today. But we'll be watching for any more social media posts. And if we don't hear anything from him this afternoon, Andrew, we will be hearing from the president tonight, we know, during his address to Congress. And he's sure to be talking about the tariff plan tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, just in that post today, he once again referred to the Prime Minister as Governor Trudeau. He has repeatedly said he wants Canada to become the 51st state through economic coercion. How are Americans in general responding? What kinds of reaction are you seeing?
Well, it's definitely being followed here today. I mean, the American networks, quite a few of them did carry Trudeau's news conference live. There's headlines being made about it. The reaction was very strong from the markets, as we were seeing today. I mean, even last night there was market reaction. It's continued today. They're down. They are not reacting well to this tariff news. And there is concern from the American business community. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, for example, put out a statement last night after Trump confirmed that these tariffs were coming, asking him to reconsider, and if he is going to impose them, urging these tariffs to be lifted quickly, arguing that Americans are already struggling with high prices and that this is only going to make things worse. That's from the Chamber of Commerce. We've been hearing from heads of major companies like Target. Their CEO was on TV this morning talking about how these tariffs are going to make food more expensive for Americans, especially now in the winter when the U.S. relies on Mexico to import fruits and vegetables. So he's warning that prices are going to go up within days, he was saying. So we've been hearing that kind of reaction, but you got to remember, Andrew, there's a lot going on here in Washington. It's not all about tariffs here. We're paying a lot of attention to it, of course, in Canada. But, the fallout from on the Ukraine issue is still happening with that Oval Office meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday, even after Trump confirmed these tariffs were coming yesterday. News that the U.S. is putting a pause on aid to Ukraine. There's thousands of Americans that have already lost their jobs here because of the cuts that are being made to the American government. There's a lot going on. It's hard for Americans to kind of absorb it all and sort through it all. So again, we'll see what the reaction is tonight. I'll be interested to watch, especially how Republicans in Congress react when Donald Trump does talk about the tariffs in his speech tonight. Who applauds him? Because we know, again, with Canada's response, Canada intends on imposing tariffs that are directly targeted at certain states here, red states, ones that supported Trump. We've heard concerns expressed from, the governor of Kentucky, for example, or other Congress people from Kentucky about bourbon being targeted, and other states that are worried about the impact of Canada's retaliatory tariffs on them. So it'll be interesting to watch for their reaction tonight.
It sure will. Megan, thank you. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick.
Nah, man, Canadians are not happy with this. Now, this has created division, obviously, in Canada, just like it's happening in America. You got Democrats screaming from rooftops, "Stop it! They're our best friends. Stop it!" I get that. This is nuts. Look, I'm a huge Trump fan. I'm a huge Trump fan. I like Trump. I love Trump. I don't agree with this. I can't blame the guy, but I don't agree with this. I feel like there was a more diplomatic approach. I certainly don't agree with Justin Trudeau's approach and our Canadian politicians. And I mean, every single one of them, every single freaking one of our politicians, man, at all levels, pretty much. They're all saying the same thing. Well, we gotta fight back. We gotta fight back. Why? Why? To prove a point? Ego? What person out there thinks, like genuinely thinks, that we have any sort of a chance doing this to America? And with Trump saying, if you do it to us, we're also going to do it to you. So any attack that we do on them, it's coming right back on us. It's nuts. This is bananas. We already know that just with the singular tariffs applied, the original tariffs applied, we got about 6 months before we go tits up financially. We are bank freaking rupt, man. That's it. Like, and this is going to delay our federal election, most likely, because already they're talking about using emergency powers. And Trudeau also in his speech this morning said, well, a reporter was asked him, are you going to basically step down now and resign Saturday when a new leader of the Liberal Party's elected? And he said, well, no, I'm going to stick around for as long as I need to because it's crazy times right now. And the transition period is going to take a little bit of time. So Trudeau is still going to be prime minister, even though there's a new elected Liberal Party leader. Chances are they're going to probe government a little bit longer. They got to figure this out. This is an economic trade war right now. We're in a freaking economic war with America, and it's only going to get uglier. Brace yourself, folks. That's the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button, and I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.